Hey guys, Kurgan here. Welcome to my Chloro-hub guide. Chloro-hub is obviously a hybrid between Chloromancer and Harbinger, and what it gives us is a melee DPS healer. So the concept of this is really, in a lot of situations now, with the average gear level that people have, it's way above what's required for a lot of content, such as experts. This is where Chloroharb can be very useful because it does some good passive healing while doing some good damage as well. So in terms of an expert, you can keep your tank alive while contributing a lot more to the damage, whereas a 61 Chloro would just be overhealing everything, and it feels like a bit of a waste. So you can use Chloroharb to do extra damage, to keep the tank alive, and also just have a bit of fun, where grinding experts can be a bit boring. In terms of raid setting, Chloro-hub is a very niche spec. It really only is good if you need that extra little more AoE healing, but um, an extra healing, an actual full healer would be a waste. So a Chloro-hub can fulfill that little gap where you still need DPS but need a bit more healing. That's really the only good situation for a Chloro-hub in a raid. So let's look at the spec. Right, so I'm using 40 Chloromancer, 32 Harbinger, and 4 Stormcore, sorry. So we're going for 40 Chloromancer for living energy. If you already have a Chloromancer, like if you're in a raid, you can actually take some points away from Chloromancer because a lot of these are wasted, not so good. You can take those points away and put them into Harbinger for, let's say, Blade Mark or into Combat Mastery and a bit into Rising Storm. But if you're running experts, 40 Chloromancer is really quite good to give your party living energy, and also it gives you the res soul tether. And yeah, 32 Harbinger is standard for hybrids and for Stormcaller because the 4 points in Storm Energy is better for both your healing and your damage output than the points which you could put into Harbinger. In terms of masteries, we're going Arcane Manipulation for more damage, and seeing that the healing Phantom Stream is good for keeping your tank alive, but again, if you're looking for more healing output, you're kind of playing the wrong spec. And then Sparking Destruction, because it's just the best. Mental Signature for extra charge. The 62 Mastery can be changed between Rejuvenating Presence or Healing Expertise. If you are just slightly lacking in the healing or just want to be more comfortable with it, take Healing Expertise. But if you want to do more AoE DPS, then take Rejuvenating Presence. Bulwark of Souls here is a no-brainer, just take it. Okay, so the macros and keybinds which we will need, there's quite a few, so bear with me. So the macros are in the description below. Please copy these into your macro book and put a good keybind for them all. They're all kind of important. On top of these macros, we'll need the keybinds for Blazing Light, Wild Growth, Withering Vine, Life-Giving Veil, Life-Bound Veil, Soul Tether, Living Energy, Radiant Spores, Nature's Cleansing, Cleansing Rush, Nature's Fury, and then you can optionally have Luminous Weapon, Lightning Blade, and Blade Rush. As well as that, you need Essence Surge and Synthesis. So yeah, there's a lot of keybinds, but they're all good abilities to have bound. If you really are struggling for some keybinds, you don't really need to keybind Living Energy or Luminous Weapon or Lightning Blade. You can just have those like somewhere else that you can just click to activate. Okay. So the buffs which you want to have, you have Eldritch Armor, and then you want to be using Lightning Blade or Luminous Weapon, depending on if you're AoEing. So if you're AoEing, you use Luminous Weapon. If you're single targeting, you use Lightning Blade. And you want to also be having Living Energy toggled on all the time. In terms of something which oh god, I'm Okay, so the macros and keybinds which you'll need, there are quite a few, so bear with me. The macros are in the description below. If you could just copy those into your macro book and then put a good keybind for all of them, they're all useful. I'll also explain how they're used later on. On top of that, the keybinds which we'll need are Blazing Light, Wild Growth, Withering Vine, Life-Giving and Life-Bound Veil, Soul Tether, Living Energy, Nature's Cleansing, Radiant Spores, Cleansing Rush, Nature's Fury, Blade Rush, Lightning Blade, Luminous Weapon, Essence Surge, and Synthesis. So, as I said, there's a lot of keybinds, and there are actually some extra abilities which you can add into that, as you can see on my bar, which I have, but they're not really required. Now, the buffs which you want to have, you need to have Eldritch Armor on, and then you have Lightning Blade for single target and Luminous Weapon for AoE damage. And then you use Life Giving if you're AoE healing and Life Bound if you're tank healing. You also want to be maintaining Living Energy at all times. And this is just a buff which you toggle on or off, and you want it on if you're the only Chloromancer in the raid. Also, you want to be casting Radiant Spores at the start of each fight, and this is maintained passively for the rest of the fight through your abilities. But if it falls off, be ready to reapply it. Right, so the next section, I'm going to split it up into first the DPS portion, just explaining how you deal your damage. And actually your DPS actually fulfills most of the healing which you'll be doing, because that's the whole idea of the spec. But then I'll be going into some sort of tank and AoE healing tips later on, just to augment your passive healing. And then lastly I'll talk about a bit of the utility, which isn't much, but it's still good to mention. So first off, the DPS rotation is actually pretty much the same as Harbcon if you've played it, with very minor differences. So of course, like Harbcon, you want to maintain Piercing Beam. Use your Piercing Beam macro for this, and it's just a 30-second debuff which you need to maintain, and you refresh it after it falls off. Secondly, you have Blazing Light. Blazing Light is just a dot which lasts 16 seconds, and you refresh it using your Lucent Slash macro, and you refresh it at 2 seconds left of Blazing Light. Lucent Slash has quite a large animation delay, so take that into account. I've explained this in my other videos, so if you want to more detailed about Lucent Slash and these mechanics, watch like my Harbcon video. Okay, so we have, so when we have these up, we want to use our spam macro, and when we get this reactive pop-up, we want to use our proc macro, and we press it until the proc is consumed, so usually one time. And it's simply keep up your Piercing Beam, your Blazing Light, use your spam macro when nothing else is available, and then use your proc macro immediately to consume your procs. That's your DPS rotation. It's really quite easy. Okay, so now we want to look on the more specifics about the healing. So first off, when you're tank healing, you want to make sure you have Synthesis on your tank and are in Life-Bound Veil. So you just want to, like at the start of the dungeon or something, just select your tank, cast Synthesis on him, and that will put a buff on him. Remember, if he dies, Synthesis actually gets taken away, so you need to recast it every time he dies. Don't forget that, because it'll lead to a few embarrassing moments if you don't. So as I mentioned before, most of the healing will be done through your rotation, but there are a few tricks which we can do to top off the tank. So first off, we have our Burst Healing macro. Now what this does is that it casts Bloom at focus and then casts either Nature's Touch at your target, or nature's healing at your focus target. So obviously we want our tank on focus, so just set him on focus using whatever bind you have. It's usually Alt F, but there are other ways of doing it, so you can like select the portrait. Okay, you can't do it for that, never mind. But yeah, put them on focus however method you use. And then we want to use this macro when we get a proc. So the reason why we want to do this is because Bloom is a special spell in the way that it has its cast time reduced through the soul tree. And the way Trion coding works is that even though it has now a zero cast time, i.e. it's instant, it's still flagged as a cast time ability. So when our procs are used, it gives Bloom a 0.5 second GCD, but doesn't consume the proc. That means we can get 2 spells off with 1 proc that have 0.5 second GCDs, which is really quite strong. So we want to gain a proc, and then use our burst healing macro and press it twice, and that is usually a very large heal on the tank. You can't see it because it doesn't have synthesis on him, but trust me, it heals a lot. So obviously you want to click it until you've consumed the proc, so it's 2 times. Also, our other trick of keeping the tank alive is that we have the spell Essence Surge. This is a 1 minute cooldown, and it just heals a lot. And it's just the oh shit button to keep your tank alive. You can make a macro for cast at focus, but I like to have it on a separate keybind, which just allows me to also heal party members, like if I need to. So yeah, that's the tank healing. There isn't that much to it. As I said, it's mainly a passive healer, and if there's really heavy tank damage, you're gonna have to swap to 61 Chloro. Okay, so now the AoE healing. Again, we have a burst AoE healing macro. Oh shit. Okay, so the AoE healing. So first off, if you want to be AoE healing, you want to be in Life-Giving Veil. And again, it's mainly passive healing, but there are some tricks we can use to slightly boost it, or to save us from like close moments that there's a lot of AoE damage. So we have, similarly to our single target burst healing macro, we have an AoE healing burst macro, which has, instead of Bloom, has Flourish in it, and Flourish acts in the same way as Bloom, with the instant but actually is the cast time ability. So we want to gain a proc and then use this macro twice for burst healing. Remember, with these macros, you don't want to be using them regularly. They really are just panic buttons. You want to keep to your normal rotation. Otherwise, if you use these regularly, you'll run out of charge and then things will get a bit iffy. Okay, another thing we can do with AoE healing is that we can use Withering Vine to give us some more passive healing. This isn't very good for on-demand healing, but it's good if we can plan for AoE healing. So if we know it's going to be a bit more than we can usually handle, and the healing's coming up in a few seconds, we can put Withering Vine up in preparation. But otherwise, you don't want to be using Withering Vine too much. So yeah, that's pretty much the AoE healing. Again, there's not much to it, but as I said, this is mainly a passive healing spec. Okay, so the utility we have. So this brings, so Chloro-hub brings cleanses and also wild growth and a battle res. So we have wild growth. This is a damage boost to the raid, and we want to be using this every minute. So at the start of the fight, a few seconds in, and then you want to be using it on cooldown. Now it's a cast time ability, so ideally we want to begin with a proc, and we always want to use it with a proc on the minute. And you want to plan your procs for when wild growth is coming off cooldown. So yeah, use that every minute. Secondly, we have our cleanses. So we have an AoE cleanse, cleansing rush, and we have a single target cleanse, nature's cleansing. It's pretty self-explanatory, just cleanse people if they need cleansing, because remember, you are primarily a healer. Our battle res is soul tether. Just remember to use this if one of your allies die. Just, again, self-explanatory, but remember to have it keybound, because I might have forgotten to say to keybind this. And yeah, that's the utility Chloro-hub brings in this spec. That pretty much wraps up my guide on Chloro-hub. Remember that this is a spec which you're really meant to be overgearing stuff with, so you need to have quite a good level of gear to be using this in expert, and it's really a very passive healing style of gameplay, which you have a few intervention moments with your burst healing macros. So try this out, get used to it in experts, and see if you like it and see if it works for you. It works pretty well for me, and I'll upload a video of an expert I did with, we actually used a DPS, a tank in DPS gear, and you can see his HP in the video. It was like 115k, and I healed it fine with Chloro-hub, and we really did it quickly. So yeah, if you want to watch that, then I'll have it uploaded. So I hope you guys found this useful. If you have questions, leave it in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them. See you guys.